Hey YouTubers, welcome back to John's Garage. Today we're going to talk about spark plugs. All the internal combustion engines out there have spark plugs. So today we have a Acura 3.2 TL and we're going to be installing these NGK Iridium spark plugs. You want to make sure you get the right spark plugs for your car. So just check on your local auto parts website, put in your make, model, year of your car, and it'll tell you what spark plugs are good for your car. You only need a couple of basic hand tools to do this. So in this car we're going to need just a screwdriver to take this plastic cover off. Then we're going to need an Allen wrench to get these off. So I got this kit at Sears Craftsman. For this car we're going to need the 6mm size to undo this. Then you're going to need a spark plug wrench. So this is a Craftsman and it's a 5/8. So you need a 5/8 socket for these spark plugs. Some older cars might require a different size, but most of the cars made in the last 20 years require a 5/8. You'll need an extension to get down inside there, and then just a standard ratchet. So some very basic tools. And when you buy your spark plugs, you might want to pick up a tube of anti-seize. You can put your spark plugs in dry, screw them in dry, but you might want to put some anti-seize lubricant on the threads, and I'll show you how to do that. And that just makes it easier to get them out when they've been in there a very long time. Spark plugs might stay in there 50,000 miles or 100,000 miles, and they take a lot of heat, so anti-seize is a good thing to put on the spark plug threads. So let's get started. This cover off, put that aside. Disconnect. This is goes to the computer and tells when the spark is going to fire. So a 6-cylinder engine, so you got 3 in the front, and then back there you got 3 more spark plugs. So sideways mounted V6. So take that set screw out of there and then give that a little wiggle, pull it out. This is a coil, so this is a coil over spark, and these things last a really long time. Really old cars would have one coil and a distributor. Cars in the last 20-25 years have individual coils. And they vary, but this is a Japanese car and most of them have coil over plug. So we'll take our socket wrench, and the spark plug is way down in there. Get that on the plug, and counterclockwise to loosen it, lefty loosey. They're not in there super tight. You don't want to over tighten them when you put them in, so they shouldn't be too overly tight to take them out. And they got a lot of threads, so you just gotta keep turning on it until it gets loose. And there's your spark plug right there. So this car had Bosch Platinum, and this is another plug option, so less expensive plug. Plugs are going to cost you between $2 a plug and $10 a plug. These are lower cost. I think they're $6.99. These NGKs were like $8.99. And it looks like the plug had a little boot grease. Sometimes you want to put a little boot grease on here when you put it in, so when these get dry and shrink a little, they won't get stuck on the plug. When these get old and you pull them out, sometimes this boot comes off, and then you've got to get down there with some really long needle nose pliers and try and get the boot off there so you can get your spark plug wrench on, or your socket on the spark plug. But these are relatively new replacements, so the rubber's in good shape and it stayed on there. You want to make sure that spark plug hole way down in there is nice and clean. You might want to vacuum out some of the crud that's in there. So I'm going to take just a moment and do that. Okay, I've got a vacuum here with a straw on the end to give it extra length. So just vacuumed out all the junk that was down inside the cylinder, or the spark plug for that cylinder. So let's take a look down in there. See how clean we got it in there. Get the light down in there. That looks pretty clean down in there now. We got the little bits of dried anti-seize out of there from the old spark plug, bits of sand. So it's looking really clean in there now. So see if I can get the light down on that hole. You can see right down to the top of the piston there. So that looks good and clean. So we're ready for the new spark plug. Now we're doing this on a cold engine. You never want to unthread a spark plug from a hot engine. You'll risk taking the threads right off the aluminum head. So make sure your engine's cold when you're working on it. So here's our new NGK spark plug. And these are pre-gapped according to the box, so you don't need to gap them. They recommend that you just put them in the way they come from the factory. We're going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. So I'll just put a little bit on there. Looks like some of this is separated in the tube from sitting for a while. It's the silvery stuff. It's the anti-seize. Don't get this stuff on your clothes. It gets all over if you get it on your clothes and you get it on your car seats. That's not good. So we'll get a good layer of this anti-seize. Do not get it on the tip. Do not get it on the porcelain. You only want it on the threads. And this is going to help it from fusing to the threads on the head. You'll have trouble getting it out later. So there we go. You want to have a paper towel handy to wipe that off. So now we're going to take the spark plug and put it into our wrench here, to our socket. Okay. And now we don't have any contamination on the tip. Okay, so got a nice clean tip there. And now we're going to just gently put it in there, down to the bottom, and have it nice and straight when we're turning it. Just thread it in by hand. You do not want to get it cross-threaded because you'll ruin the threads on the head. So you want to thread it in gently by hand until you've got it all the way in. Zoom this camera out a little bit. And then once you've got it in, you want to snug it up on there. And you can use a torque wrench on these, but they don't need much torque, so you can just do it by hand. It's getting tight. We're not putting a dire strain on it. Just snug it up. There's a little aluminum washer on that spark plug, and that's what's going to seal it. So we're just pressing that a little bit. That's all you want to put on it, just so it doesn't unthread while you're driving. Okay? Now we're going to put our coil back in the hole. And like I say, you could put a little boot lubricant on there if you want, but you don't have to. This might have a little bit inside of there from the last one anyway, so that's good. And boot lubricant, they sell it at the auto parts store in little packages, like $1. This is a set screw. So we put some anti-seize on here before, so you don't want it to get stuck from being in there for a long time. Thread that in by hand. You don't want any cross thread damage to your threads. Put that in by hand. Line it up so it's straight, so it looks good. Don't over torque this, just get it in there. Okay, that's tight enough. And then snap your connector tight. Make sure it's on there tight. And we're done. So that was one spark plug, and then you're just going to do second one, third one, then you go to the back side and you do the 3 that are back there. You might have to put a piece of foam or something on here to lay on top, get your arms back there, or work on it from the side, whatever works for you, so that you can get in there and get your spark plugs in. And after you got them all in, put your plastic cover back on. And after you've done all 6, you're done. Clear everything away, start up the engine, see how it sounds, and you should be good to go. Okay, so the spark plugs in the back of this V6 are a little more difficult to get to. So one of the things you're going to want to get yourself is a extra 3-inch extension in addition to your 6-inch. Now the number 1 spark plug is right here. This will be on the passenger side, right in front of the passenger. And let's see if I can get a shot for you there. So you want to feed your 6-inch extension down in the hole and then put your 3-inch extension on it, and then you can loosen that one up. So it is difficult to get to, but it can be done. So the other 2 are right here. You'll also want to inspect your spark plugs and look what the tips look like. So these are the old ones, and you can see the porcelain is still white. The tip is not damaged. The gap still looks good. There's not excessive oil or anything. This one, the porcelain's a little less white. That came out of the number 1, which is the most difficult to get in and out. But overall, they're not bad. They've got like 100,000 miles on them, and they're not very expensive spark plugs. So this will be a good indication if you got some cylinder damage or something. You know, if you got oil blow by or something and your plugs are fouling.